1,000 FBI agents, over 100,000 pages, and one name they were desperate to erase. When a congresswoman walked into a hearing room with receipts from multiple whistleblowers, what happened next wasn't just uncomfortable. It was a masterclass in watching power try to explain itself. The question she asked was simple enough that a child could understand it, but the man sitting across from her couldn't answer, or wouldn't, and that silence said everything.
That attitude of let it all out, we're getting reports of actions that run contrary to getting everything out, and that also involve diversions of FBI resources. For example, an FBI whistleblower reported that you were pressured by the Attorney General to place 1,000 personnel on 24-hour shifts to mine roughly 100,000 Epstein-related records to redact President Trump's name from the files. Bloomberg reported this, that you directed FBI special agents from the New York and Washington field offices to join the Bureau's FOIA employees in Winchester and another building a few miles away, and that while reviewing the Epstein files, FBI personnel identified numerous references to Trump in the documents, and people familiar with the matter said that Trump's name, along with other high-profile individuals, was blacked out. Now, the New York Times reports, and this is a quote, Justice Department officials diverted hundreds of FBI employees and federal prosecutors from their regular duties to go through the documents at least 4 times, including once to flag any references to Mr. Trump and other prominent figures. Details of the review were based on accounts by 3 former FBI and Justice Department officials who spoke on condition of anonymity because of fears of retaliation, and further that the FBI finished, after they finished its review of the files and materials, was sent to a team of Justice Department lawyers who double-checked the FBI's redactions and, quote, were instructed to flag any mentions of Mr. Trump and other celebrities. Now, I have 3 questions for you, Mr. Patel, about this. First, how many times did President Trump's name appear in the Epstein files? Was it more than 100, more than 1,000? Were the agents who were pulled from their duties to redact the president's name from the Epstein files working on criminal cases or national security cases or child sex trafficking cases? And are the number of agents that have been reported diverted for these purposes, is that accurate?
No.
No what?
You asked if it was accurate. I said it wasn't.
So you're saying that none of this happened?
No, I'm saying it was inaccurate.
Okay. How many times did President Trump appear in the Epstein files? More than 100? More than 1,000?
No, and what we've been able to release is what we've been legally able to release, and that has...
No, that's not the question. I asked you, how many times did the president's name appear?
I don't know.
It's your testimony. You do not know that answer.
The number of times? No.
Could you tell us how many agents were diverted for this task and what they were working on?
When you say diverted, you make it seem as if agents were pulled off what they do all the time. Agents at the FBI masterfully do double duty and triple duty. And because of the public's interest in this case, we flexed resources to make sure that we could answer the public's signal demand. So do you want us to look through the material and provide it to you, or you do not want us to do that?
So it's your testimony that no one was diverted from a criminal matter, that this was a top priority to go through this material to look for Mr. Trump's name. Is that your testimony? That's the highest priority for the FBI?
What's one of the most impressive things about the FBI leadership and the careers that are in place is that they make the decisions on who to send where on priorities and make sure the mission needs are not hurt. And that's what happened here.
It's shocking to me that the FBI would think that erasing Mr. Trump's name from the Epstein files is a high priority when we have crime, we have national security threats, we have terrorism threats, we have murders such as that occurred, unfortunately, with Mr. Kirk. It's shocking to hear that that's your highest priority. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
That's literally not what I said.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Wisconsin is recognized.
Picture this. While violent criminals walk free, while terror threats multiply, while children disappear into trafficking networks, the Federal Bureau of Investigation allegedly pulled nearly 1,000 of its agents off their regular work. Not to chase down predators, not to stop the next attack, but to carefully, methodically comb through documents connected to a dead man, making sure certain names never saw daylight. That's the allegation that hit Congress like a bomb, and it came from inside the Bureau itself. The report started surfacing in whispers. Bloomberg picked it up first, then the New York Times confirmed it with their own sources. 3 former officials from the FBI and Justice Department, speaking on condition of anonymity because they feared retaliation, painted a disturbing picture. They described a massive operation centered in Winchester and other facilities near Washington. Agents from the New York and D.C. field offices, some of the most experienced investigators in the country, suddenly found themselves reassigned. Their new mission had nothing to do with solving crimes. They were document reviewers now, working around the clock shifts, searching through Jeffrey Epstein's files for one specific thing: references to powerful people. According to these insiders, the process was meticulous and repetitive. The FBI would review the documents, flagging every mention of certain individuals. Then those same documents would go to Justice Department lawyers who would review the FBI's work, double-checking that nothing slipped through. 4 times. The entire collection was scrubbed 4 times, with each pass specifically hunting for mentions of Trump and other celebrities. Every reference, every connection, every piece of context blacked out, redacted, erased from what the public would eventually see. But here's where it gets interesting. Redactions aren't unusual in sensitive cases. They protect ongoing investigations, shield innocent people, keep victims' identities safe. Nobody questions that. What raised eyebrows was the scale and the specific focus. If you're protecting an investigation, you don't need 1,000 agents. If you're shielding victims, you don't need 4 separate review cycles. And if you're just following standard procedure, you definitely don't pull special agents off active criminal cases to do administrative work that FOIA officers normally handle. Something didn't add up. Representative Zoe Lofgren from California noticed that math problem too. She's not a bomb thrower or a grandstander. She's a lawyer, been in Congress for decades, served on multiple oversight committees. She knows how to build a case, and she walked into that hearing with her homework done. She had the Bloomberg report. She had the Times piece. She had whistleblower testimony. And she had 3 very specific questions that would either confirm or destroy the entire narrative. The hearing room went quiet when she started talking. She laid out the allegations calmly, almost academically, citing her sources as she went. An FBI whistleblower says you were pressured to put 1,000 personnel on this. Bloomberg says agents were diverted from field offices. The Times says Justice Department officials handled multiple reviews specifically to flag Trump's name. Then she looked directly at the FBI director and asked her first question. How many times did President Trump's name appear in the Epstein files? Was it more than 100? More than 1,000? His answer was immediate. 1 word. No. Lofgren paused. She asked him to clarify. Was he saying none of it happened? The director backtracked slightly. He said the reporting was inaccurate. Not that it didn't happen, just that it was inaccurate. Lofgren zeroed in. Okay, so how many times did the president's name actually appear in those files? The director shifted in his seat. He said he didn't know. Lofgren repeated the question, making sure everyone heard it clearly. You don't know how many times the name appeared? That's your testimony under oath? The director confirmed it. He didn't know the number. Think about that for a second. If the entire operation was routine, if it was just standard document review with normal privacy protections, why wouldn't the director know that basic fact? If 1,000 agents spent weeks or months going through these files, specifically flagging certain names, someone counted. Someone kept track. Someone wrote a report. The FBI doesn't do anything without documentation. Every hour logged, every task assigned, every finding recorded. They're the premier investigative agency in the world. They know how many bullets are in their armory and how many surveillance hours were logged in Topeka last Tuesday. But they don't know how many times a specific name appeared in one of the highest profile cases in recent memory. Lofgren wasn't buying it either. She moved to her second question. Can you tell us how many agents were diverted for this task and what cases they were working on before? The director bristled at the word diverted. He said it made it sound like agents were pulled off important work when really FBI personnel are talented enough to handle multiple assignments. They do double duty, triple duty all the time. Because of public interest in the Epstein case, they flexed resources to meet demand. He turned it around on her. Do you want us to review these documents and provide transparency, or don't you? It was a clever deflection, but Lofgren had been in Congress too long to fall for rhetorical tricks. She rephrased. So it's your testimony that no one was diverted from a criminal matter? That going through these documents looking for Mr. Trump's name was a top priority for the FBI? The director got defensive. He insisted that FBI leadership makes smart decisions about resource allocation and ensures mission needs aren't hurt. That's what happened here, he said. Everything stayed on track. Lofgren delivered her knockout line with the same calm tone she'd used throughout. It's shocking to me, she said, that the FBI would think erasing Mr. Trump's name from the Epstein files is a high priority when we have crime, national security threats, terrorism, murders like the one that happened to Mr. Kirk. It's shocking to hear that's your highest priority. The director tried to interrupt, insisting that's not what he said, but Lofgren's time had expired. She'd gotten what she came for. His denials, his evasions, his inability to answer basic questions, all of it now part of the congressional record. What made that exchange so powerful wasn't the drama. There was no shouting, no viral clapback moment, no theatrics for social media. It was powerful because of what it revealed through absence. Every, I don't know, every pivot to bureaucratic language, every refusal to provide a concrete number painted a picture far more damning than any accusation could. When someone in authority can't answer simple factual questions about operations they allegedly oversaw, it tells you the truth is worse than what they're willing to admit. But let's zoom out and look at the bigger machine at work here. The Epstein case has always been about power and how it protects itself. For decades, this man operated in plain sight. Prosecutors knew about him. Police knew. His behavior was reported, investigated, even prosecuted once in a sweetheart deal that let him serve 13 months in a private wing of a county jail with work release privileges. Afterward, he went right back to his lifestyle. How does that happen? How does someone with that history, those accusations, those connections, avoid real consequences for so long? The answer is layers. Lawyers who know which calls to make. Money that funds the right campaigns and charities. Social connections that make prosecuting him politically complicated. And information, secrets about powerful people that serve as insurance policies. Epstein's network wasn't partisan. It included people from both political parties, from business, entertainment, academia, royalty. That's what made him dangerous and untouchable. He knew too much about too many people who could make problems disappear. When he finally got arrested again in 2019, people thought maybe this time would be different. Federal charges, high-profile case, no way to sweep it under the rug. Then he died in his cell under circumstances that sparked 1,000 conspiracy theories. Whether you believe the official story or not, one thing became clear. The secrets didn't die with him. Those documents, those flight logs, those photographs and videos, they all still existed. And everyone who ever crossed paths with Epstein suddenly had a very good reason to want those files to stay buried. That's the context that makes Lofgren's questioning so significant. She wasn't asking theoretical questions about policy. She was asking about a specific, documented effort to control information. If the whistleblowers are telling the truth, and remember, these are people with security clearances and decades of service who risked their careers to speak up, then what happened wasn't routine document review. It was a political operation dressed up in bureaucratic clothing. Consider the resources involved. 1,000 agents, even if they're working part-time or in shifts, represents an enormous commitment. The FBI has about 35,000 employees total, with around 13,000 special agents. If you pull 1,000 people for even a few weeks, that creates gaps. Cases slow down. Investigations stall. Leads go cold. Every agent has a caseload, and when they're reassigned, someone else has to pick up the slack or things just don't get done. The directors claim that nobody was really diverted, that agents just multitasked their way through it, defies both logic and experience. And what about the 4 separate reviews? That detail keeps getting glossed over, but it's crucial. 1 review makes sense. You want to be thorough. 2 reviews? Okay, maybe you're being extra careful about legal requirements. But 4 times? With the specific instruction each time to flag references to certain individuals? That's not caution. That's scrubbing. That's making absolutely certain that nothing embarrassing survives. Here's what that process probably looked like. First pass. FBI agents identify all potentially sensitive information, including names of prominent figures. Second pass. Different set of FBI personnel double-check, make sure nothing was missed. Third pass. Justice Department lawyers review the FBI's redactions, looking specifically for the names they were told to protect. Fourth pass. Another legal team confirms everything's clean. At each stage, someone's making a choice about what the public gets to see and what stays hidden. Those aren't legal decisions being made by judges based on established law. Those are political decisions being made by appointees based on who might be embarrassed. The legal justification for redactions usually falls into a few categories. National security, obviously. Ongoing investigations where revealing information could compromise the case. Privacy rights of individuals not charged with crimes. Protection of victims. All legitimate reasons. But when you redact someone's name from documents related to Epstein, what exactly are you protecting? If the person wasn't charged, wasn't accused, just happened to be mentioned, then sure, maybe their privacy matters. But if the mention relates to their connection to illegal activity, even tangentially, the public interest in knowing outweighs privacy concerns. This is where the rubber meets the road on government transparency. We're told to trust institutions, to believe that career professionals make decisions based on law and policy, not politics. But when whistleblowers from inside those institutions say otherwise, when directors can't answer basic oversight questions, when the math doesn't add up and the explanations don't hold water, trust evaporates. People start believing the worst possible versions of events because the official versions make even less sense, and that's dangerous for everyone. When citizens lose faith in justice systems, they stop cooperating with investigations. They don't report crimes. They don't serve on juries. They assume corruption and act accordingly. The social contract breaks down. That's why moments like Lofgren's questioning matter so much. She was doing the unglamorous work of democratic oversight, forcing officials to go on record, creating a paper trail that investigators and journalists can follow later. Because here's the thing about congressional testimony. It doesn't end when the hearing does. Those transcripts become evidence. If an inspector general decides to investigate, they'll start with what was said under oath. If reporters dig deeper, they'll use those statements to find contradictions. If whistleblowers come forward with documents, they'll compare them to official testimony. Every evasive answer, every contradiction becomes a thread someone can pull. The director said the reporting was inaccurate. Fine. Which part? Bloomberg said 1,000 personnel. Was it 800? 500? 200? If the real number is significantly lower, why not just say so? The Times said agents were specifically instructed to flag Trump's name. If that's false, why not explain what actually happened? When you call something inaccurate but refuse to provide the accurate version, you're not correcting the record. You're just denying without defending. Same thing with the priority question. Lofgren asked if this was considered a top priority for the Bureau. The director got defensive, insisted that's not what he meant, but he never actually explained where it ranked. Was it urgent, routine, back burner? If it was just standard FOIA compliance, you'd expect him to say that clearly. Instead, he talked about public interest and flexibility, words that sound good but mean nothing specific. This is how institutional accountability dies. Not in some dramatic cover-up with shredded documents and midnight meetings, but in hearing rooms where officials use professional-sounding language to avoid saying anything concrete. Where I don't recall, and that's inaccurate, become shields against inconvenient questions. Where the complexity of government operations becomes an excuse for why simple facts can't be shared. The public isn't stupid. People understand that FBI work is complicated, that some information needs to stay classified, that privacy matters. What they don't understand is why their government acts like transparency is the enemy, why asking how many times a name appeared is somehow an unfair question, why concerned citizens have to rely on anonymous whistleblowers instead of official disclosures. And the timing matters too. These files have existed for years. Epstein was arrested in 2019. He died that same year. The case has been essentially closed since then, at least as far as prosecuting him personally. So why the sudden massive effort to review documents in 2025? What changed? Was there a FOIA request that couldn't be ignored? A lawsuit demanding release? Or did someone in power get nervous about what might come out and decide to take preemptive action? Lofgren didn't ask that question directly, but it hangs over the whole exchange. Whistleblowers don't usually come forward about routine bureaucratic processes. They blow the whistle when they see something wrong, something that violates norms or laws, something that bothers their conscience enough to risk their careers. 3 separate officials from different parts of the justice system all told similar stories about this document review. That's not coincidence. That's pattern. Think about what they risked by talking to reporters. FBI agents and Justice Department officials sign non-disclosure agreements. They're warned repeatedly about unauthorized disclosures. They know that speaking to the press, even anonymously, could end their careers if they're identified. They did it anyway because what they witnessed troubled them enough to accept that risk. That's not partisan politics. That's institutional conscience trying to correct institutional corruption. Now, some people will hear this story and immediately slot it into their existing political narrative. Trump supporters will say it's proof of a deep state conspiracy to protect themselves while attacking him. Trump critics will say it's suspicious that so much effort went into redacting his name specifically, suggesting there's something damaging to hide. Both reactions miss the larger point. This isn't about one person or one party. It's about a system that has learned to protect powerful people regardless of what they've done. The Epstein network included people across the political spectrum. Flight logs showed Democrats and Republicans. Photographs showed business moguls and celebrities. Phone records connected him to academics and scientists. Some of those connections were probably innocent. He cultivated relationships with accomplished people as cover for his criminal activity. But some weren't innocent, and the people involved know who they are. They know what they did, or what they witnessed, or what they ignored. And they have every incentive to keep those files locked down tight. That's the real scandal here. Not that one name got redacted, but that the entire system is designed to protect the comfortable rather than expose the guilty. Redactions are supposed to be surgical, removing only what's legally necessary. Instead, they become blackout curtains hiding entire landscapes of information behind vague legal justifications. And when someone like Lofgren tries to pull the curtain back even a little bit, she gets stonewalled with bureaucratic double talk. Watch the video of that exchange if you can find it. Watch the director's body language when she asks how many times the name appeared. Watch him shift, pause, calculate his answer. That's not someone searching their memory for a forgotten detail. That's someone deciding in real time how much truth he can afford to tell. Every person who's ever been interrogated or done interrogating recognizes that tell. It's the look of someone trapped between competing priorities, honesty and self-preservation. And honestly, maybe we should have some sympathy for him. He's not the villain here, not really. He's a bureaucrat trying to navigate impossible political waters. He serves at the pleasure of the president, which means he serves at the pleasure of whoever's in the White House. If the attorney general tells him to prioritize something, he prioritizes it. If political appointees decide certain information needs extra scrutiny, he makes it happen. That's how chains of command work. But that's also how accountability gets diffused until no one person is responsible for the final outcome. Who made the decision to assign 1,000 agents? Don't know. Probably a committee recommendation based on resource availability and projected workload. Who decided Trump's name specifically needed to be flagged? Don't know. Probably general counsel following standard protocols for high-profile individuals. Who approved the 4th review after 3 hadn't found anything new? Don't know. Probably just standard procedure for cases with significant public interest. See how that works? Every decision gets distributed across so many people and processes that no single person can be held accountable for the result. This is the genius of modern bureaucracy. It achieves outcomes that no individual would openly advocate for, while giving everyone involved plausible deniability. Nobody set out to hide the truth. They were just following protocols, serving public interest, protecting privacy rights, ensuring thorough review. All good reasons, all defensible in isolation. But add them all together and you get a massive operation that just happens to shield powerful people from scrutiny. Lofgren's questioning exposed that machinery, not by catching anyone in an obvious lie, but by forcing them to describe the process in plain language. When you remove the bureaucratic jargon and just look at what actually happened, it sounds indefensible. Thousands of work hours spent making sure certain names stay hidden while crime victims wait for justice and terror threats go uninvestigated. Put that way, no reasonable person would approve. But wrap it and talk about resource flexibility and mission priorities and public interest, and suddenly it sounds almost responsible. That's why oversight matters. That's why having someone in Congress willing to ask uncomfortable questions and refuse easy answers is crucial. Most hearings are theater. Members give speeches disguised as questions, then don't wait for answers before launching into their next talking point. Lofgren did the opposite. She asked narrow, specific questions and waited for actual responses. She didn't fill the silence with her own commentary. She let his non-answers speak for themselves. The director said the reporting was inaccurate but couldn't explain what was wrong. Red flag. He said he didn't know how many times names appeared in documents his agency reviewed extensively. Red flag. He said no one was diverted, but couldn't account for where the personnel came from. Red flag. None of those are smoking guns. None prove wrongdoing by themselves. But together, they paint a picture of an operation someone doesn't want to discuss in detail. What happens next depends on whether anyone follows up. Congressional oversight has become toothless in recent years because hearings happen, officials give evasive answers, and then nothing comes of it. No so buenas. No inspector general investigations. No consequences. The hearing becomes content for cable news and YouTube, generates some angry tweets, then fades as the next controversy takes over. That cycle has trained officials that they can stonewall without repercussions, but occasionally something breaks through. A journalist gets documentation that contradicts testimony. An inspector general decides to investigate. More whistleblowers come forward with details that make denial impossible. The January 6th committee showed that congressional investigation can still work when members are genuinely committed to finding truth rather than scoring political points. Whether that happens here remains to be seen. The challenge is that Epstein stories have a way of evaporating. Too many powerful people have too much to lose. Media outlets that might normally pursue an investigation aggressively suddenly go quiet when the subject touches people in their own social circles. Politicians who grandstand about government transparency find reasons to focus elsewhere when the corruption implicates their donors or allies. Everyone agrees in principle that the full truth should come out, but somehow nobody wants to be the one who makes it happen. That's the cynical read. The optimistic take is that we've reached a tipping point where public demand for answers overwhelms the usual protection mechanisms. People across the political spectrum want to know who was involved with Epstein and what they did. They want the flight logs published. They want the photographs released. They want every name, every connection, every piece of evidence laid out so the public can judge for themselves. That kind of broad consensus is rare and powerful. If that pressure continues, if people refuse to let this story die, eventually the information will come out. Maybe through legal discovery in civil cases. Maybe through freedom of information battles that wind their way through courts. Maybe through more whistleblowers who decide their conscience matters more than their careers. The truth has a way of surfacing, especially when this many people are looking for it. But it requires sustained attention. That's the hardest part. We live in an attention economy where outrage is the currency and controversies have a shelf life measured in days. Something shocking happens. Everyone talks about it for 72 hours. Then the algorithm serves up the next thing and we move on. That's not an accident. That's how information management works in the digital age. You don't suppress stories anymore, you just wait them out. The people who want these files to stay hidden are counting on that dynamic. They know that if they can stonewall through a few news cycles, public interest will wane. Some new scandal will emerge, some celebrity will say something stupid, some political drama will dominate headlines. The Epstein files will slip back into obscurity, mentioned occasionally as historical context, but never actually revealed. They're playing the long game, betting on our collective short attention span. Lofgren's hearing moment gives us a choice. We can treat it like just another viral clip, share it with comments about how savage her questions were, then forget about it by next week. Or we can treat it like what it actually is, evidence of a serious institutional problem that demands follow-up. The first option is easier and more fun. The second option is harder, but more important. Because here's what's at stake. If government agencies can divert massive resources to protect political figures without oversight or accountability, what else can they do? If whistleblowers risk their careers to expose misconduct and nothing changes, who will blow the whistle next time? If congressional questioning leads to evasion without consequences, what's the point of oversight at all? These aren't theoretical questions. They're about whether our system of checks and balances still functions, or if it's become decorative. Every time officials get away with non-answers, every time hearings end without follow-up, every time the public forgets before anything changes, the bar drops a little lower. Standards erode, norms dissolve. What was once considered scandalous becomes accepted practice. That's how institutions rot from the inside, not through dramatic corruption that everyone can see, but through gradual normalization of things that should never be normal. 1,000 FBI agents assigned to redact names from old documents isn't normal. Multiple review cycles, specifically targeting certain individuals, isn't normal. A director who can't answer basic questions about operations he oversaw isn't normal. But if we treat it like just another day in Washington, it becomes normal. It becomes business as usual. And once that happens, there's no going back. So what's the alternative? Keep asking questions. Demand follow-up. Support journalists who investigate. Back whistleblowers who come forward. Vote for representatives who actually do oversight instead of just performing it for cameras. Push for Inspector General investigations. File Freedom of Information requests. Use whatever tools citizens have to force transparency. It's unglamorous work. It doesn't generate viral moments or make heroes out of anyone, but it's how accountability happens in a democracy. Slowly, persistently, through 1,000 small acts of refusing to accept easy lies. Through people like Lofgren, who do their homework and ask pointed questions. Through whistleblowers who risk everything to tell the truth. Through citizens who pay attention even when it's boring and demand answers even when it's uncomfortable. The Epstein files represent something bigger than one criminal case. They're a test of whether our system can still hold powerful people accountable, or if we've reached a point where connection and influence place you above scrutiny. Every redaction, every evasion, every I don't know is an answer to that test. And right now, we're failing, but tests can be retaken. Stories can be reopened. Questions can be asked again and again until someone finally provides real answers. That hearing wasn't the end of anything, it was an opening. A crack in the wall of secrecy that might, with enough pressure, turn into a breach. Whether that happens depends on whether we care enough to keep pushing. The comfortable answer is that it doesn't matter. The files are old news. That whoever was involved with Epstein has already faced whatever consequences they're going to face. The uncomfortable truth is that justice delayed is justice denied, that secrets protect the guilty while haunting the innocent, that a system that can't tell the full truth about one case won't tell it about others either. Zoe Lofgren asked how many times a name appeared in some files. She didn't get an answer. That should bother everyone, regardless of whose name it was or what the document said. Because the next time, it might be your name, your case, your justice that gets buried under bureaucratic evasion and political protection. And when that happens, you'll want someone in that hearing room asking uncomfortable questions and refusing to accept non-answers. That's what this moment represents. Not partisan politics or conspiracy theories, but the basic democratic principle that government serves the people and must answer to them. When officials can't or won't answer simple questions about how they use public resources and public authority, the entire system becomes suspect. Not because of what they're hiding necessarily, but because hiding anything destroys the trust that makes governance possible. So remember this exchange. Remember the questions that didn't get answered. Remember that whistleblowers risked their careers to raise alarms. Remember that thousands of work hours allegedly went into protecting reputations instead of serving justice. And remember that none of it changes unless we refuse to let it be forgotten. The Epstein files aren't going away. The questions aren't settled. The accountability hasn't happened. This story isn't over. It's just waiting for the next chapter to be written. Whether that chapter brings truth and consequences, or more evasion and cover-up, depends entirely on whether enough people decide it matters.